This NFL Week 8 NFL Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
It as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NFL Week 8 Sunday games just a few days away. And, of course, we'll get into our player props here for those games. We'll recap briefly what we saw on Thursday Night Football. We'll talk about our touchdown scores, honorable mentions, and then we'll wrap it up with our best bets, of course. But coming off of a 2-0 best bets from Thursday Night Football, got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing this Friday afternoon?
I'm great. We just kind of talking about it offline. This is busy time of the year, man, but it's great though. You dive right back into it. We're doing Propcast for NBA coming up as well, and I know both of us are handicapping NBA, and I know even for yourself, you got MLB. I think which starts tomorrow. So it's a lot going on for World Series. But super excited to be here as always, as we almost close to middle of the halfway point for the season here. So Week 8 has treated us pretty good so far. Like you said, Thursday night best bet was great. And excited to talk props for Week 8 here. How about yourself? How you doing today?
Yeah, man. Again, like we were talking offline briefly, it's that time where we're just really, really busy, right? With like so many different sports going on. To finish the NBA pod with my guy Lante this morning for the Friday card, and you and I are doing the props here for NFL Week 8 on Sunday, and then I'm doing a VSiN spot right after we get off here to talk some sports there, and then just it's just that time, man. You got to put in the hours, got to put in the grind. But we love it, right? We're junkies here for sports, and it's going to be busy times here, but appreciate everybody that does rock with us here on the Propcast, man. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you guys do us a favor, leave us a rating and review over on the on Spotify. There, only you can prevent corporate gambling from taking over. If you are getting to this before Friday night, the World Series kicks off Friday night, and the MLB Gambling Podcast, we're hosting a contest. It's free to enter. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/World Series to enter. A $150 SGPN gift card is up for grabs. So again, just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/World Series for the contest. Chris, last night, like I mentioned, had a 2-0 best bet segment for us there. I had the Aaron Jones to go over. I said 13.5, Chris, and then I was talking to some other friends about player props, and I went back and checked. It went up to 15.5. So I'm not saying that we moved the line or anything like that, Chris. But it wasn't a sweat. He did get 19 rush attempts for the Minnesota Vikings against the Minnesota Vikings against the Rams. And we talked about the handicap there, 22 plus rush attempts in every single game across the board. And every single running back has now exceeded at least 16 or more rush attempts against the Los Angeles Rams. So Aaron Jones got us to the window. I believe your best bet was Sam Darnold on the under passing yards there. He got us to the window there as well. The other one we had mentioned, we talked about Aaron Jones over on his receiving yards. That one got to the window as well. The only one that I missed on, Chris, was Tutu Atwell to go over on his longest reception. The number was 19.5, and he finished up with one catch for 18 yards. So needed a couple more yards there for him to get there. Then I also took Matthew Stafford over 33.5 pass attempts. He finished up with a 34. So won by the hook there. So it turned out to be a pretty good night as far as the props for me. How did your turn out as far as the props went? I know best bet cash, but how did your other ones do?
Yeah, so Aaron Jones was actually a loser. He had all those carries, and didn't actually go up and over the 66.5 rush yards, which was a tad bit frustrating. He had went over in 6 of his last 8 games, and we talked about that Rams run defense ranking 30th, but he just really couldn't get it going, even though Minnesota scored a ton of points, scored enough points to win. Defense kind of took a backseat. we talked about, I think during honorable mentions, Kobe Parkinson over his 32.5 receiving yards. Glad I ended up staying off of that, because when we did the Propcast, we try to, give the information out early, but sometimes we're not 100% sure who's going to be, out there. And I actually would have bet on Kobe Parkinson to go under if we had known that both Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp were going to be back. I think that's enough for me to go under on Kobe Parkinson and Tutu Atwell and all of the other players that we mentioned. I know Tyler Johnson's of the world, like all of those guys, I probably would have went under on. So not too bad of a night, especially hitting the best bet. That was the one that we really, really needed to get to the window with, and it was a winner for sure.
Definitely got us to the window there, so we can build off of that momentum and turn the page and get over to the Sunday NFL Week 8 player props. Chris, let's dive into it. Let's start with our quarterback props here, my man. I'll let you lead it off. Where are you taking us for player prop number 1?
All right, so we're going to let's go to the Tennessee game. Tennessee Titans and the Detroit Lions game will be played in Detroit this week. And I'm looking at Jared Goff here. I like his pass completions actually to go up and over. The number was 21.5, and I actually saw that plus money over on ESPN Bet when I did I haven't had a chance to check it today to see what the current line is, but I love a good plus money play. I haven't really given out too many of those throughout the season. Jared Goff has been on fire recently. I mean, we've been talking about Jared Goff for some time now here. Yeah. He has been pretty incredible. He completed 22 of his 25 passes for 280 yards in his most recent game. That's the third game where he's thrown for at least 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the consistency is there, the accuracy is there. Over the last 4 games, he's completing 84.5% of his actual passes here, which is the highest completion rate among all qualifying quarterbacks during that time frame over the last 4 games. So yeah, I think match up against the Titans. Their pass defense has been pretty solid on paper, but they are allowing and they're allowing the 4th fewest completions in the NFL as far as percentage wise, holding teams to about 59%. But there are some vulnerabilities there. You go through and look at it. Josh Allen, torched this team for 258 yards. And honestly, what it really comes down to me is game script. I think Detroit's going to have to move the ball through the air because this Tennessee Titans rush defense has been pretty good. They are a team that really kind of, stuffs the rush and makes teams one-dimensional. And I think Jared Goff at the crib in his dome is going to continue just to be hot this week. So I went Jared Goff up and over his 21.5 completions here, to get things started.
Yeah, and the numbers, I think, for the pass defense for the Titans, it seems, I think it's misleading because take a look at the quarterbacks that they've actually played, on their schedule. It hasn't been the prettiest of names there. I'll try to find the list here.
I got it. If you're ready for me. So you got Caleb. You got Caleb Williams in his first week, right? And we know what a disaster that was. Next week they got Aaron Rodgers, and they actually did pretty poor in that game. Aaron Rodgers went 18 for 30, 176 yards, and ended up throwing 2 touchdowns in that game. Then week 3, it was Malik Willis, who actually had a pretty solid game, but we know he's not going to go out there and pass the ball too many times. More so used his feet and ended up with 6 rushes for 73 yards. Then they got the Dolphins, and that was Tyler Huntley. So back-to-back, backup quarterbacks there. And then it was Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco had a pretty good game against them. He did have the 22 completions. So this is the first time. And then last week, like I said, Josh Allen, 21 completions in that game. But this will be the first week, that they've faced an elite quarterback outside of Josh Allen in quite some time. So I think it's a buy low spot and more so a fade spot for this Tennessee's defense against the quarterback position here,
Yeah, I think they might start getting a little bit exposed here, Chris, honestly, because like we just mentioned that on the quarterbacks that they have faced, the schedule has been pretty easy for them. But now, like you mentioned, they face Josh Allen, and now you go up against Jared Goff, who that offense has been firing on all cylinders here. So I couldn't talk you off of this here for Mr. Jared Goff here. And I think, when we did the division previews, I had mentioned that I was on him at around 13-1 to lead the league in passing yards. And hopefully that just continues. He continues to hopefully rack up the yardage there. All right, for my quarterback prop here, Chris, I am gonna go over to that game between the Green Bay Packers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags coming off of 2 straight games over there across the pond. The number here for Jordan Love on his passing yards, I'm going with his 258 and a half. And it's really just honestly a fate of how bad this pass defense has been for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you honestly just take a look at the numbers thus far on the season. The Jaguars are allowing 285 passing yards per game, 25 completions on 36 attempts. The only 2 quarterbacks that have not exceeded this number was Deshaun Watson, and we know how bad he had been throughout the season prior, to his season-ending injury. He only had 186 passing yards in that game, Chris. And then it was Caleb Williams a couple weeks ago in London. He had 226 passing yards, but that was a game where they were playing from ahead and really didn't have any incentive to throw the football. He ended up with 226 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. And last week, Drake May in London, 276 passing yards. So I think for Jordan Love, I think this could be a game where he has a great passing yards game, passing touchdowns game. If you're a same game parlay player, if you want to throw in over 1.5 passing touchdowns, it will be juiced. But 5 straight weeks now that the opposing quarterback has had at least 2 passing touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars here, Chris. So I do like Jordan Love over on his passing yards here against the Jags for NFL Week 8.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And who is not going over, like you said, against that defense, especially, first game back home, like you said, 2 weeks that they've actually spent. That takes some time. Have we ever had a team, back-to-back weeks in London like that?
I think if it had been a team, it's probably only Jacksonville that's probably done it. I would have to go back and look it up, but it's just off of recent memory, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that could be like a just a parameter that we have not been able to see, with neutral spots like that. So this is we've seen the effects so far. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I know that these teams coming back from those London games, have really, really struggled, especially first week back. So I love this one. I'm low-key kind of jealous. I hadn't even thought about them coming back and finding a number that good. That's solid. I like that a lot.
All right, let's get over to player prop number 2 here. Chris, what do you got?
All right, so we'll go to the let's go with your guy here. Joe Mixon. I like him. A couple different ways I feel like you can play Joe. His rushing yards stood out to me. The number was 75.5 yesterday. His longest rush is actually 16.5, and that also kind of stood out to me because Joe's been doing his thing recently. I'm really a fan of what Joe Mixon has been doing. So you look at his rushing yards, and he's only averaging about 51 over the course of the season. But the matchup here is a juicy one. We have Minnesota. I'm sorry, not a Minnesota. We have a Indianapolis Colts defense that's really just been giving it up to the running back position. I could go and I guess I'll start at the top. The first time these two teams played, it was opening day, and you guys were in Indianapolis, and Joe Mixon still went off for 30 rush attempts for 159 yards in that game. But outside of that, week 2, it was Josh Jacobs, 32 rushes for 151 yards in that game. And then you see the defense play a little bit better against the Colts, play a little bit better against the Steelers, but then it was Tanks Bigsby, who, in that game had 13 carries for 101 yards. Tony Pollard, 17 carries for 93 yards. Devon Achane last week, 15 carries for 77 yards. So with the way that Joe Mixon has been playing recently, I just kind of feel like this is a game where, it wouldn't surprise me if Joe went back up and over the century mark. And if he finished with 100 rushing yards again, just because there's not the strength of this Indianapolis Colts defense here, So we'll go Joe Mixon up and over 75.5 rushing yards. Also like the longest rush of over 16.5. Just want to do a little bit more diving before I make that an official play as well.
Yeah, I think that we talked about at the beginning of the season, right? And it was how bad the Colts rush defense had been, in particular those first 2 weeks, right? Joe Mixon that had 150 plus rushing yards. And I think, who was it? Josh Jacobs was the other one the following week that had a big yardage game there as well. But it seems like they're back on that trend again of being a bad rush defense. Jaguars, Tank Bigsby had 101, Tony Pollard 93, and then last week between Devon Achane, who had 77, Raheem Mostert had 50 there as well. So I think with how the passing game hasn't looked as great for this Texans team as what the expectation was, just because of how great and then we've talked about this a lot, how great CJ Stroud was supposed to, or is going to be, and there's no question about it. But just coming off of that rookie year that he had, that expectation has just been there for this Texans team that, hey, he's just going to pick up right where he left off. Well, you also got to remember that they're playing a first place schedule. They're playing tougher opponents now. But with Joe Mixon coming back from that injury, what was it against the Patriots? I mean, he looked like he picked up right where he left off. And this is another team that we talked about with the Rams that people like to run the football against. Well, opposing teams are running close to 29 times per game against the Indianapolis Colts there, Chris. So, yeah, couldn't talk you over. I think this should be another big Joe Mixon week. Division game. These two teams know each other very well. So it should be another big Joe Mixon weeks here for the Texans here. So couldn't talk you off of that. All right, before we do get over to my next player prop, I should say, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports: NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. Try to say that 5 times. Boosttober is upon us, which means you're getting a spooky amount of profit boost and much more. And with the NBA tipping off, every NBA Pick'em entry from October 19th through October 27th will be boosted. And you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. If you're looking at NBA for Friday night, give me Andre Drummond higher on his rebounds here tonight against the Toronto Raptors. Wouldn't be surprised if this guy walked into 20 rebounds here tonight. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use promo code MACHINE. All right, Chris, let's continue here. Let me give out my running back prop here, and I am going to go with, you know me, I love my receiving yard props for the running back position. Kenneth Walker, over 23.5 receiving yards in this game against the Buffalo Bills. And number one, not sure the status of DK Metcalf in this game. I know that he had suffered an injury in the last week's game for the Seattle Seahawks. But we also have talked a lot about how opponent running backs against the Buffalo Bills have had a lot of success through the air. They're allowing the second most receiving yards are the Buffalo Bills through the first 7 weeks here, 54.43 per game. Not going to read off all the numbers there, but I mean, it's been a lot of success through the air. Opponents running backs are averaging 8 targets per game as well, with about 6.5 receptions per game. And like I mentioned, 54 receiving yards there as well. Now let's take a look at what Kenneth Walker has been able to do for this Seattle Seahawks team. Not only on the ground, but also, like I mentioned, through the air. It has been heavily involved. I'm trying to pull up the numbers here quickly. No, I don't need Lonnie Walker. I need Kenneth Walker. We're not at NBA just yet here, but here we go.
Those are the same guys, right? Right, you know.
I haven't seen them. I haven't seen those two guys in a room together, Chris. So they could be the same guy. But throughout 4 straight weeks, that Kenneth Walker has gone over this projection of 23.5 receiving yards. 36 against the Lions, 57 against the Giants, 37 against the San Francisco 49ers, and also 24 last week against the Atlanta Falcons there. And the targets have also been there for him as well. 26 targets through the first 5 games that he's played in, 23 receptions off of those 26 targets at 160 receiving yards for Kenneth Walker. So if DK Metcalf's not able to go, I think we'll probably see some checkdowns here, or at least plays with Kenneth Walker being involved in the passing game here, Chris. So give me over 23.5 receiving yards. Let me get the updated number for this one for Kenneth Walker, because I played this early in the week. I like this all the way up to 30.5, but it's still at 23.5 currently over on DraftKings there. So Chris, running back prop for me, Kenneth Walker over 23.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, I'll be telling this one. You know, if you know how much I love some good old Seattle offense, right? We I think I failed to cash last week. I think it was an honorable mention, or maybe in the quarterback prop that I gave out, which was the quarterback to go up and over Mr.
Gino.
Geno Smith. Yeah, Geno Smith to go up and over his pass attempts. And this team still leads the league in pass attempts, even in passing in general, and some of those are going to be checkdowns. I feel like the game script last week was pretty spot on. The problem is Atlanta didn't really show up, and Seattle didn't need to pass the ball in the fourth quarter because I think it was a double-digit win for the Seattle team. So I think you lined up like here for a really big day from Kenneth Walker, potentially on the ground as well as through the air here. A couple dump downs and a lot of opportunities from Geno Smith in this offense for sure.
All right, that is player prop number 2 each. Chris, take us over to player prop number 3. What do you got?
All right, so this one actually comes in the Monday night game, but it was something that I couldn't really shy away from at all. And we're going with the guy that has the hot hand and the guy that's also playing against the cold defense, in my opinion. And that's going to be George Pickens. Over on his longest reception, the number comes in at 23.5. Not a lot of juice, -110 over on BetMGM. This was something that we talked about last week. Last week I came on, I gave out AJ Brown longest reception over 24.5 yards, and that was a winner. And they're playing against the same New York Giants defense. This is something that we've continued to cash. Last week it was AJ Brown. 2 weeks ago it was Jamar Chase. He had a 33-yard reception. T. Higgins also had a 24-yard reception. 3 weeks ago it was Tyler Lockett, 33-yarder. 4 weeks ago CeeDee Lamb, 55-yarder. 4 weeks ago Amari Cooper, 24-yarder. And it just goes on and on and on. You look at Pickens, if he's gone up and over this number of 23.5 in 4 of his last 5 games. We know that they made a quarterback change at the quarterback position with Mr. Wilson now throwing them the ball, and that's only increased the depth of the actual reception. Last week he had a 44-yarder. The week before that, 2 weeks ago, he had a 31-yarder. He's only under this number against the Dallas Cowboys. But outside of that, 4 of the 5 games, 4 of his last 5 games, this guy's actually had a reception. 5 of his last 6 games as well. He's actually had a reception that has gone up and over this 23.5 number. And then just doing a little bit more, deep diving, 7 receptions so far this season of 30 yards or more, So I love George Pickens. I love this, picking on this Giants secondary that tends to give up at least 1, if not 2 big plays per week. So I'll go George Pickens up and over, longest reception, 23.5 yards.
Yeah, I was looking at his yardage for this week, Chris. Just couldn't get there. Maybe I should save that for honorable mentions. But when we talk about Russell Wilson, we know he can throw the deep ball. And I think we saw this last week as well, if I'm not mistaken, for George Pickens, that it was his coming out party for the season there. And I think that when we talk about the Steelers quarterback situation, that we knew that move is going to come just because under Justin Fields, they were really heavily relying on the defense to keep them in games and win games. But like you mentioned it last week, he had 111 receiving yards, 44 longest reception there. So I think those opportunities will be there, especially against the secondary of the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. So hopefully this is where we start seeing George Pickens getting involved in the offense there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'll definitely co-sign this with you. All right, for my last player prop here, player prop number 3, I am going to go to, I like 2 here. I'll save the 1 for honorable mention, but it's a little bit correlated. But I'm going to go David Njoku over 53.5 receiving yards for the Cleveland Browns. So we know, obviously, the story with Deshaun Watson being done for the rest of the season with the Achilles injury. Insert Jameis Winston. That's going to be the quarterback now for the foreseeable future for this Cleveland Browns team. And we know he's a slinger, right? We've seen him with his time when he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But in particular, I think that there's some type of rapport that him and David Njoku have. And I know now that they don't have Amari Cooper because they traded him over to the Buffalo Bills. So I think that just opens up more opportunities for a guy like David Njoku. But last week against us Cincinnati Bengals, he had 10 receptions, 14 targets, 76 receiving yards, and the touchdown. And we talk about this Ravens team as well that they're facing this week here, Chris, that they have also allowed, I believe it's the second most receiving yards to the tight end position. Just let me feel. I know the Chiefs are number 1 and the Ravens are number 2. We saw week 1 collectively with the Kansas City Chiefs. They had 71 receiving yards. Brock Bowers had his coming out party in his rookie season, 9 receptions, 98 receiving yards. Jake Ferguson, 6 for 95. I think the only week that didn't get over this number of 53 was Dalton Kincaid, but he still had 5 receptions for 47 yards. And then last week, Cade Otton, 8 receptions on 10 targets for 100 receiving yards. And yes, that was because Mike Evans and Chris Godwin had gone down. They were in a situation where they're having some throw from behind. And also your Commanders, Zach Ertz, 4 receptions, 68 receiving yards against the Titans. Against the Ravens there. So I say all that. I do like David Njoku here to be involved in this offense. Its number was around 51.5, now up to 53.5. It looks like it's climbing as well here. So last player prop for me here, Chris, David Njoku over 53.5 receiving yards at the current number.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, and you included it in a part of your handicap here is, the quarterback change, of course, but also the moving on of your number 1 wide receiver. Who's going to soak up those? Who's the best receiver in this wide receiver room? And I think without a question now, that immediately becomes David Njoku. So I'm expecting big things from him throughout the the rest of the season. I do expect the Browns to be playing from behind. Granted, they have a very talented defense, but it feels like that defense is on the field for a large majority of the game. So eventually they will. They have been, getting worn down and just don't have enough offense. So, them playing from behind, only, lends into your player prop cashing even more. So I do like David Njoku. I hadn't put all of that together, but I love the handicap here. Probably going to end up tailing you here as well.
All right, so there we go. 3 player props each for myself and Chris for the Sunday games. Chris, let's get into honorable mentions for this week before we get to our touchdown scores, man. Who do you like as an honorable mention, or who do you like you're trying to get to the window to?
So the one person that really stuck out to me, was Baker Mayfield. I just think game script with Tampa Bay playing Atlanta. I think the game will be played in Atlanta, no, in Tampa Bay, and I think the way I kind of see this game plan, is that Tampa Bay is going to have to move the ball. I think they're going to move the ball through the air. Like I know that Atlanta defense is not great against the run. They're giving up 137 yards per game, which pushed them bottom 10. But Tampa Bay has been like this offense. I know that they're going to be, down a couple pieces, or, those wide receivers might not be 100% if they do end up playing. But this Tampa Bay offense, they just like Baker Mayfield. I said a lot of bad things about him in my life, and I'm starting to take those things back. Like he is. I mean, they trust him in this offense. Dave Canales is not the offensive coordinator and play caller over there anymore. And Baker Mayfield has continued to do really good things. Even with Canales, being in Carolina now. I'm looking at the numbers, and this Tampa Bay offense is number 1, in passing first downs. They average 14.1. They're number 7 in yards per pass. I'm sorry, number 6, getting almost 8 yards per pass. And they also are passing the ball for 248 yards per game. The thing that really jumped off to me, and this is probably why I'm gonna end up locking it in. I compared the Atlanta completion percentage, what they're allowing, and they're allowing teams to complete 72.2% of their passes. That's the worst in the NFL. So teams are able to sustain drives and stay on the field because of that. And then I go over to Tampa Bay's offense, and they're completing 70.5% of their passes. So to me, the game being played in Tampa Bay, like I think that helps a little bit as well. And if I got a team that's passing that has a completion percentage of 32%, and against a team that's allowing the most completions, I like Baker Mayfield here. Up and over his 32.5 pass attempts. I may shy away from the pass attempts and just look towards the completions, but I like Baker Mayfield a lot in this spot. Kind of watching him, carve up that Baltimore Ravens offense at the beginning of that game last week. The other player prop that I considered, is Javonte Williams. I mean, like, how do we not like Javonte in this spot? It's really, just a continuous fade of this Carolina Panthers defense. Boy. You talk about terrible defense against the run. I mean, they continue to just give it up. Last week, it was, my Washington Commanders. Brian Robinson Jr. had 71 rushing yards on 12 carries. 2 weeks ago, it was injured Bijan Robinson, who had 95 yards, and Tyler Algilar, who had 105. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but every single running back has gone for at least 70 yards against this team, if not, a whole lot more throughout the season. Outside of the Raiders, who just chose to pass the ball a lot in that game. That was also the first game that we saw the quarterback change. So 63 and a half, I think 63 and a half right now, seems like a bargain for Javonte Williams, who also had a really good game last week. Like, he's coming off a really good game. I want to get the numbers real quick for Javonte in his last game. So he just played against the New Orleans Saints, and he had 14 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. I got him on my fantasy team, so I would love for him to be able to replicate that. And this is the number I think is going to trend up as the week goes on here, So I'm probably going to lock in Javonte up and over 63 and a half receiving yards here. I like it a lot. I mean, 63 and a half rushing yards here. I think that number's a tad bit too low for the worst defense against the run in the NFL.
Yeah, and also Bryce Young is back this week, right? For the Carolina Panthers at the starting quarterback position. So we'll see how he responds here up against his Denver Broncos defense. But yeah, I mean, look, Panthers were another rush defense that we talked a lot about. I couldn't talk you off of that there for them. The one I was looking out for, and I've talked about this as well, has been the slot wide receiver for the Titans. I believe it's Tyler Boyd, but I know he's dealing with an injury, and I haven't seen an update on his status because I don't see his player props out just yet for this game here. But that was one I was considering, just because I mentioned this at the lines, I've given up plenty of yardage to slot wide receivers thus far this season. They haven't done a very good job of defending, and every single slot wide receiver has gone over their projection against the Detroit Lions. So I'll see if Tyler Boyd props do pop up. I didn't want to give that out, obviously, without a number out there. I don't know if you do see one, Chris, for Tyler Boyd or not, but the other one
I'll check it out now.
Yeah, I'll mention Jameis Winston on his passing yards to go over. I mean, we talked about it. He's going to be a slinger. And again, with the spread right now, right outside of a touchdown here, Chris, I think that he's going to have to throw the football. The number's at 233.5 for Jameis Winston. So I do like the over there. Nick Chubb going up against his Baltimore Ravens defense that has been the best in the entire league thus far, and him only being its second game coming off of the injury of the ACL and that knee injury. Looked like he had some rust last week. I know he scored the touchdown there, but outside of that, I think he only had 24 rushing yards, if I'm not mistaken. So expect Jameis Winston to have to throw the football here all over the field. And then I'll mention one more. It's belt to ass week, Chris. Patrick Mahomes against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not sure if you remember the Kermit the Frog bit.
I had a notification set in my phone that popped up on Monday afternoon. I vividly remember. Right. What did he say? He said, "We'll see him," right?
Yeah, he said in so many words. I mean, he gave it professional answers, but he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, when the time comes, we'll handle that. So this is the time now for Patrick Mahomes this week 8 in Vegas. You added DeAndre Hopkins to the wide receiver group there. Not sure how effective he's going to be, but just having another weapon out there. So expect the Mahomes and the Chiefs maybe to run up the score here a little bit. I know the offense hasn't looked as great. Mahomes hasn't looked as great, but I think this is the opportunity for him to go out there and perform and just, Kermit the Frog. And you can call me Kermit all you want, but I have more rings than your franchise that was over the past 2 decades there. So his number's at 238.5 here, Chris. I think the one interesting one for me is I see his passing touchdowns. It's at 1.5 minus 120. I mean, yes, I know when he had the weapons and healthy receivers that this number typically would be like 1.5 minus 150, minus 175, maybe even 2.5. But I think that he can get 2 passing touchdowns here in this game against the Raiders. So good luck to the Raiders this week. You have a pissed off Patrick Mahomes this week here, Chris. So those are my honorable mentions, man.
Yeah, that Raiders defense, I mean, what is it? Is it Chunky's Campbell soup or Wheaties? Or I'm not sure what they're gonna need, but they're gonna need a lot to be able to slow down the fired up Patrick Mahomes, because I'm definitely with you, and I don't think he's gonna forget that, either. So yeah, I think you have some very solid ones. The Patrick Mahomes, I was looking at it, that those touchdowns, and I think the number is just that low because I mean, he hasn't really, like, I think the glamorizing story about the Chiefs is always Patrick Mahomes when we think about it, right? But that Kansas City defense keeps them in games so frequently, right? Like, it doesn't matter that Patrick Mahomes, doesn't he have like 8 interceptions? Like, isn't that Patrick Mahomes 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions throughout the first few weeks?
Yeah.
So I mean, who would imagine? And they're undefeated. Like, he hasn't even gotten super hot yet. So we know that time is gonna come. Adding a new shiny toy like DeAndre Hopkins is only going to help. You still got Xavier Worthy out there. And no matter who they have, they're still getting the job done. Backup running back, backup wide receiver, backup number 2 receiver. That defense and Steve Spagnuolo keeps them boys in the game. And yeah, you don't want to fire up Mahomes. So I'm right there with you, I like your honorable mentions. I think those are worth plays for sure.
All right, before we get over to touchdown scores for this week, let me tell everyone about our friends over at BetUS. BetUS, bet with the best in the business. That's BetUS. They've been around for more than 30 years, and you can easily deposit using cryptocurrency and get lightning fast payouts. US players are always welcome. BetUS is live with Trick or Treat on Horror Street. From now until Halloween, BetUS will be offering daily promotions and a raffle entry to win a sports or casino prize pack that they will give away on October 31st. You can enter multiple times, and every time you make a $200 deposit, you get 1 entry into the raffle. So go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS, promo code SGPN. So they know that we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sports book. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, and press build a model for me. And Rhythm gives you predictions for every game and player prop and has also a myriad of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. Plus, since the NBA season is officially upon us, their NBA models are now live over on BetRhythm. And this week for the NFL, BetRhythm likes Trevor Lawrence under 233.5 passing yards. They're predicting he has 215 passing yards in this game against the Green Bay Packers. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, Chris, let's get into our touchdown scores for this week here. Who do you like to find the end zone?
All right, so we'll start with Javonte. This was the easiest one to me, maybe even double, but I saw his and I'm definitely thinking that the odds are going to change here, but you can get Javonte Williams to score 1 touchdown at -110. I thought we might see like an instant -125, -130. But I mentioned it already. I don't want to talk too much about it, but if you just look at the Panthers defense, I talked about them being, the worst defense. They've given up 162 yards per game, 32nd in giving up the most yards, 6 most attempts, 6 most yards per attempt, and teams are running the ball 31, the second most times against them as well. And you just look at the touchdowns that they've given up. This team has given up a touchdown to the running back position, every game this season. Every game. Week 1, Saints got 2. Chargers got 1. Raiders got 1. Bengals got 2. Bears got 3. Last week, Falcons. Well, 2 weeks ago, Falcons got 3. And then last week, of course, my Commanders did get 1 with Brian Robinson Jr. as well. So I think, getting that at -110 is a steal. I may even take Javonte Williams and put a little bit on this too. Next guy up is Amon-Ra St. Brown. We know that James Williams is suspended for a couple games. Look like he's going to get 2. So being able to get Amara, I thought that, he'd probably be minus 130, but I see a
Yeah.
minus 113 out right now. And it may close closer to minus 130, but now all that attention, now he gets even more attention from Jared Goff in that offense as well. I think it's a really good matchup against a Tennessee team that can stifle the run at times, but can have struggle stopping the pass. So those were the two guys that stood out to me the most. I wanted to get there with, I do think that the Cowboys game versus the San Francisco 49ers should be some fireworks in that game, but I'm looking at San Francisco, and it feels like, I know it's just a couple weeks ago, a lot of these players were on the injury report, but it feels like that list is still, just as long. Like they all came back and now everybody's hurt again. I saw Jawan Jennings questionable, Devo questionable, Jordan Mason questionable. I wanted to get there with Jordan Mason, thinking that, he would find some success on the ground against this Cowboys defense, but didn't quite get there. I see him at minus 125, even though he is listed as questionable. Want to go through and kind of check the injury report a little bit. I know he was limited in practice yesterday due to that shoulder injury, but haven't pulled the trigger on him quite yet. So I guess I'll go Javonte, Amon-Ra St. Brown just this early in the week. We're having a couple more days to kind of look into this market, but I absolutely love these two guys. Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos, running back, Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off of Javonte. I mean, you laid out the numbers beautifully there with the Carolina Panthers rush defense, how bad they've been. So I definitely think that he will be able to find the end zone. Who knows, maybe in twice this week for the Denver Broncos. I'll go George Kittle, man. We've talked about him a lot on this pod. He's still at plus 135. No, you mentioned the questionable tags there for a lot of the guys there at the skill positions for the San Francisco 49ers. I think it was, 5 straight weeks now he's able to find the end zone as George Kittle. So, yeah, give me George Kittle plus 135. I think this is going to be the week, Chris, that the Miami offense, with Tua being back, is going to have a good week. And anytime I see Tyreek Hill at plus odds, at plus 110, I'm definitely sure you can find better numbers out there for him. I think that he can find the end zone here as well. I think Tyreek Hill had mentioned that when he saw Tua back on the field there, it made him cry. And I think that
he did
they're all
say
going to
that.
go. Yeah. So I think they're all going to go out there and play well here in this game against the Arizona Cardinals defense. So I think that for Tyreek Hill, I think there's a good opportunity here, plus 110 for him to find the end zone. So I'll throw that one out there. And then I was curious to see what Joe Mixon is. Oh, sorry. David Njoku. I think that he can find the end zone here again as well. Plus 255 for the Cleveland Browns there. We talked a lot about how he should get the targets
Plus
here.
320, on FanDuel.
There you go. Plus 320. So like we always say, shop around, get the best number. So I'll throw these 3 out there. 2 tight ends this week, George Kittle and David Njoku. And I'll throw Tyreek Hill out there to find the end zone as well for the Miami Dolphins. All right, Chris, let's get over to our best bets to wrap up this episode here. Where are you taking us for your best bet?
We are going to let's go to Houston. I like your guy, Joe Mixon. Best odds you're talking about is anytime touchdown. Books are anticipating that he definitely gets in. I think I was just looking at the number, minus 150 is the best number you can get for Joe Mixon to find pay dirt this week, and I think he absolutely does. But I also think it's going to be a really big rushing game for him. So we'll go Joe Mixon. I typically like to fade running backs, and that's been successful for us most times. But I'm actually going to go over on Joe Mixon. I think he has a really good game, even in the I guess round 2 of the divisional matchup here. 30 for 159 in the first week. And this Colts run defense is something that I'm just not trusting right now. So we're going to go Joe Mixon. He looks spry, look young, missed a week because of injury, or maybe even 2 weeks because of injury. So, youthful Joe Mixon, we'll take him up and over 75.5 rushing yards here, as the best bet for week 8.
Yeah, I love it. Again, we talked a lot about how bad the Colts have been with their rush defense. We saw what Joe Mixon did in the first game there this season, 150 plus rushing yards. We talked about how the other running backs are having success against this Colts team. So we're going to need them, especially without Nico Collins for the Texans here. So yeah, I definitely can co-sign that for sure for Joe Mixon this week. For my best bet, Chris, I think it's going to be David Njoku, man. I think that he's had a You know what? I'm going to go Kenneth Walker. Let's go Kenneth Walker over 23.5 receiving yards. We talked about how the Bills are giving up the second most receiving yards to the running back position. And I think that this is a good spot here for him. Again, we'll see if DK Metcalf plays this week or not, but I just think that Kenneth Walker, like I mentioned, he's done this in 4 straight weeks. The targets have been there for him. I think Geno Smith will look for him in this game here at home, trying to string together a winning streak here. I know they lost a couple there, but they beat the Falcons last week. Now they have a tall order here against the Buffalo Bills, but I think that Kenneth Walker can definitely be involved in this offense here for the Seattle Seahawks. So best bet, Kenneth Walker over 23.5 receiving yards for NFL Week 8. And that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Propcast. NFL Week 8 went through our player props, our honorable mentions, touchdown scores, and best bets. So hopefully we'll be back next week talking about more winners for the NFL Week 8 slate. But Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
No, I feel like we did a great job, you know. I think we gave out some really good looks, and I think we're gonna get some cash this weekend as we have been doing. So as always, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Definitely, you know, check us out leave us a review wherever you listen to the podcast on. It just helps the algorithm, helps the channel grow. You support the overall, you know, just Propcast in general, and SGPN and everything that we're doing over here. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Always bet responsibly and enjoy Week 8 in the NFL this week.
Yeah, 100% co-signing everything there. Stay tuned, NBA Propcast. Hopefully we'll start that next week. I know I mentioned to Chris that we probably want to gather some data points and things like that before we give out player props for the NBA, but we'll be rocking that as well, hopefully starting next week. Yeah, make sure you guys follow my guy Chris over on the Twitter machine at ChrisBeCappinn, 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. And again, make sure you subscribe to the Propcast here on the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and then leave us a rating and review on the Propcast on Spotify. If you could do that for us as well, would be greatly, greatly appreciated. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off, and always remember to let it ride.